Emma Lawson's fingers gripped the steering wheel with a growing sense of desperation as the countryside stretched endlessly before her. The sky, a thick blanket of gray, threatened rain with every rolling cloud, and the wind whipped through the open window, tugging at her loose hair. Her breath came in shallow, nervous bursts. The weight in her belly, a life yet to fully bloom, reminded her of every uncertainty she carried with her on this solitary journey. She was pregnant, alone, and utterly lost. The road beneath her car was narrow and winding, flanked by tall skeletal trees whose branches reached out like brittle fingers, scratching at the edges of the fading light. Emma's mind drifted to the place she had left behind. A cramped apartment filled with memories she no longer wished to face. A father who had vanished before she could ask the questions that now burned inside her. And a future she wasn't sure she could face. She had driven for hours, seeking escape, clarity, or perhaps just silence. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The first heavy drops of rain began to fall, splattering against the windshield in jagged patterns. Emma eased the car to a slow stop, her eyes scanning the landscape for shelter. Ahead, half hidden among tangled brambles and wild overgrowth, she spotted the outline of an old building, a church abandoned and worn by time. Its stained glass windows were clouded with grime, and the wooden doors sagged on rusted hinges. Yet, somehow, the sight of it brought a flicker of hope, a promise of refuge amid the storm. With a hesitant breath, Emma unlocked the car door and stepped out into the chill. The rain fell harder now, soaking through the thin fabric of her jacket and chilling her skin. She hurried toward the church, her footsteps muffled by the sodden earth beneath her boots. The air was thick with the scent of wet stone and decaying leaves, a strange mix of decay and sanctuary. Pushing open the heavy door, Emma was met with a rush of stale air and silence so deep it pressed against her ears. The church's interior was a cavernous space of shadows and dust. Sunlight filtered dimly through the cracked, stained glass, casting muted colors onto the cracked stone floor. Rows of broken pews lined the nave, their wood splintered and worn by neglect. The altar stood distant and solemn, draped in faded cloth, a relic of prayers long forgotten. Emma's eyes adjusted to the gloom as she took cautious steps inside, the floor creaking beneath her weight. She felt the cold seep through the soles of her boots, settling into her bones. Despite the chill, the church offered a strange comfort, a quietness that wrapped around her like a fragile shield against the storm outside and the turmoil within. Her hand drifted to her belly instinctively, a tender gesture born from a mixture of protectiveness and uncertainty. The child she carried was a fragile beacon in the darkness of her life. And here, in this forgotten sanctuary, Emma felt a strange kinship, as if the place understood the fragility of new life and the courage it demanded. As she moved deeper into the church, Emma noticed the intricate carvings on the walls, faded angels, worn crosses, and delicate vines that crept like whispers from the past. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and damp stone, mingled with something else, something harder to name, a faint trace of incense, or perhaps the memory of prayers once spoken aloud. Emma's eyes were drawn toward the altar, where a faint glimmer caught the corner of her vision. A subtle glow, like the last embers of a dying fire, flickered behind the altar's base. Her heart quickened, a mixture of curiosity and caution, compelling her forward. Steeling herself against the chill, Emma stepped closer, her fingers trailing along the rough stone. There, partially hidden behind a loose panel, she spotted a narrow door. its edges worn smooth by years of neglect. The door was cracked open just enough to reveal darkness within, a secret space concealed beneath the church's solemn surface. The storm outside intensified, rain hammering against the roof with relentless fury. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she hesitated, her mind racing with questions. What lay beyond this hidden entrance? Why had it been concealed, and for how long? The church, abandoned and silent, held more than just memories. It held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Her instincts whispered that this place, with all its shadows and silence, might offer her more than shelter from the storm. It might offer her a beginning. Summoning the last of her courage, Emma knelt and pushed the door open further, revealing a narrow staircase winding downward into darkness. The air that escaped carried the scent of earth and something older, something sacred. The dim light from above barely penetrated the gloom below, but Emma could make out the rough stone walls, damp and cool to the touch. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal railing, steadying herself as she began to descend. Each step echoed softly, a slow rhythm marking her passage into the unknown. The weight in her belly reminded her of the life she carried, fragile and new, yet insistent in its presence. As she reached the bottom, the staircase opened into a small chamber, its walls lined with symbols carved in stone. The air was thick with the scent of dust and something faintly herbal, like dried flowers or forgotten remedies. Shafts of pale light filtered down from a small grate above, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Emma's eyes widened, taking in the details. There were shelves carved into the stone, holding remnants of glass bottles, tattered cloths, and faded parchments. A wooden chest sat in one corner, its surface scarred and aged. The chamber felt like a secret kept safe by time itself, a hidden refuge beneath the church's solemn exterior. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the chest, the wood rough beneath her touch. She lifted the lid slowly, revealing its contents. Old letters tied with faded ribbons, small religious relics, and a worn leather-bound diary. The pages were yellowed and brittle, the ink faded but still legible. Emma traced the diary's cover with reverence, feeling an unexpected connection to whoever had written these words long ago. The room seemed to hold a quiet power, a space where stories had been told and lives had been protected. Her heart ached with a mixture of sorrow and hope. Here, beneath the shelter of the forgotten church, Emma found a moment of peace. The storm raged outside, but within these walls, she was no longer alone. The hidden chamber whispered promises of resilience and sanctuary, a place where she might find the strength to face the uncertain road ahead. As the rain continued its relentless beat against the stones above, Emma settled onto the cold floor, cradling the diary in her hands. The weight in her belly reminded her of the life waiting to be born, fragile yet fierce. And in the silence of this forgotten sanctuary, she felt, for the first time in a long while, that she could begin again. The worn leather-bound diary rested gently in Emma's trembling hands as a strange warmth spread through her, mingling with the chill of the hidden chamber. The faint glow from the narrow grate above softened the shadows, casting a fragile light on the faded gold lettering embossed on the cover. She traced the curves of the title with a tentative finger, the weight of the moment settling over her like a whispered promise. Curiosity stirred deep within her, pushing aside the ache of exhaustion and fear that had clung to her since she left the life she once knew. The storm outside continued its relentless rhythm, rain hammering the ancient stone above. But here, in this secret chamber beneath the abandoned church, Emma felt a tether to something larger, a story waiting patiently to be uncovered. With a deep breath, she opened the diary, brittle pages crackling softly. The handwriting was delicate but deliberate. Ink faded to a soft sepia tone. The first lines were a greeting, a letter to those who might one day find this hidden place, a plea for understanding and remembrance. As Emma read, the words painted a vivid picture of a woman who had lived long before her time. A midwife named Agnes, who had dedicated her life to caring for pregnant mothers during a perilous era. The diary recounted tales of secret births, whispered prayers, and the quiet bravery of women who sought refuge beneath the church's protective walls when the world outside was unkind and unforgiving. Emma's heart ached as she imagined the courage it must have taken for those women to trust a stranger in the shadows, to lay their lives and their unborn children in the hands of Agnes and her small band of helpers. The diary spoke of danger lurking beyond the chapel doors, of persecution and fear, but also of hope and resilience woven through every birth. Her fingers lingered on a passage describing a hidden sanctuary beneath the altar, a place where women could find safety, away from prying eyes and hostile forces. This chamber, Emma realized, was that sanctuary. The very space she now occupied had been a haven for lives like hers, fragile and full of promise. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek, warmed by the realization that she was not alone in her fears or her hopes. Agnes's words reached across the centuries, binding Emma to a lineage of women who had faced the unknown with strength and compassion. She closed the diary gently, holding it close as if it were a talisman. The storm outside had softened to a gentle patter, and the air in the chamber felt thicker with history, with stories waiting to be told aloud once more. Her gaze drifted back to the faint glow she had noticed earlier, coming from behind the altar above. Driven by a mixture of reverence and curiosity, Emma rose slowly, the weight in her belly reminding her of the urgency behind every step. She climbed the winding staircase back toward the main floor, the wooden steps groaning under her careful tread. Emerging into the dim light of the nave, she moved toward the altar with cautious purpose. The church seemed to hold its breath, the silence deep and expectant. Reaching behind the altar, Emma pushed aside the crumbling stone panel, revealing a narrow door, half hidden in shadow. The faint glow she had seen was brighter now, spilling from within the crack like a beacon. Her heart pounded as she reached forward and gently eased the door open. Inside was a small chamber bathed in an ethereal light, soft and warm. Candles flickered on stone shelves, their flames steady despite the draft that whispered through the church. The air smelled faintly of herbs and honey, a subtle sweetness that seemed to promise comfort and healing. Emma stepped inside, her eyes wide as she took in the room's contents. Shelves lined with jars of dried plants, bundles of lavender and sage hanging from the ceiling, and a simple wooden table adorned with worn tools, scissors, needles, and small bowls carved from wood. The chamber was a sanctuary in miniature, a place of quiet care and protection. Emma's fingers brushed over the smooth surface of the table, her thoughts drifting to the women Agnes had tended here, their stories etched into the very air. She felt a sudden sharpness in her abdomen, a pang that stole her breath. Instinctively, Emma steadied herself against the rough stone wall, her mind racing. The diary's stories of secret births, of women who had come here seeking refuge, echoed in her ears. The room seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as if the walls themselves held the strength of generations past. Emma's fear mingled with a growing determination. She was not merely a visitor in this place. She was part of its living legacy. As she explored the chamber, Emma's eyes landed on a faded map pinned to the wall. Its edges were torn and yellowed, but the lines were clear. A detailed sketch of the church and its surroundings, marking hidden passages and secret rooms. A small inscription near the bottom read, for those who seek shelter and new beginnings. Emma's breath hitched. The map was a guide, a key to understanding the sanctuary's deeper purpose. She realized that this place was more than a refuge. It was a promise, a safeguard for life, a beacon for those who had nowhere else to turn. Her fingers traced the routes carefully, memorizing the paths and secret doors. The knowledge felt like a gift, a lifeline extending from the past to her trembling hands. The quiet was broken suddenly by the distant sound of footsteps, soft at first, then growing louder, scraping against the stone floor above. Emma's heart leapt into her throat. The church's silence shattered. Someone was coming. Panic surged through her veins, sharp and cold. She glanced around the chamber, searching for a place to hide the diary and the map. Her breath quickened, the weight in her belly pressing heavily against her resolve. She slid behind a tall wooden screen draped with faded cloth, holding her breath as the footsteps echoed closer. The door to the church creaked open, and the faint murmur of voices drifted down the stairwell. Emma's mind raced. Were they locals? Authorities? Would they discover the chamber, the diary, the secret that had been preserved for so long? The thought of losing this sanctuary, the only fragile hope she had found, filled her with a fierce protectiveness. The voices grew louder, footsteps pacing the nave above. Emma pressed her hand against her belly, drawing strength from the life within her. She would not let this place be lost. Minutes passed like hours as the intruders lingered, their voices low and searching. Emma stayed silent, heart pounding, waiting for the danger to pass. At last, the footsteps receded, fading into the distance. The church fell back into its heavy silence, broken only by the soft drip of water echoing through the stone walls. Emma exhaled slowly, the tension in her body easing. She emerged from her hiding place, clutching the diary and map close to her chest. In the stillness that followed, Emma knew she had made a choice. This place, with all its shadows and light, its secrets and stories, was hers to protect. The legacy of Agnes and the women before her had found a new keeper. As the storm outside softened to a gentle drizzle, Emma settled once more in the hidden chamber. The diary opened before her. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. A quiet promise that, no matter the darkness, life would find a way. The hidden chamber beneath the altar had become a fragile sanctuary for Emma, a place where the past and present whispered in quiet harmony. She sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, the worn diary open before her, its fragile pages filled with stories that seemed to pulse with life. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and the heavy silence of the abandoned church enveloped her like a protective shroud. Emma's fingers traced the delicate script as she read deeper into Agnes's words, each entry revealing layers of courage, sacrifice, and hope. The midwife's journal told of women who had sought refuge here, their stories etched into the very walls of the sanctuary. Emma felt their presence around her, their fears, their strength, their whispered prayers, and a deep swell of connection rose within her. Memories stirred unbidden as she absorbed the tales. The ache of loneliness, the uncertainty of motherhood, the desperate search for safety. Emma's own journey, marked by abandonment and solitude, intertwined with the historic struggles chronicled in the diary. She understood now that this place was not just a relic of the past, but a living testament to resilience. Her gaze lifted from the pages to the chamber's stone walls, where faint symbols carved in relief caught the dwindling light. Angels with weathered wings, entwined vines, and protective sigils seemed to watch over her, silent guardians of a sacred trust. The air carried a faint scent of dried herbs and beeswax, a subtle reminder of the care once bestowed here. Closing the diary gently, Emma stood and moved to the shelf where faded jars and bundles of herbs rested. She touched the dried lavender and sage, inhaling their muted fragrances. The room held the essence of healing, a balm for wounds, both physical and unseen. Her thoughts drifted to her own unborn child, the fragile life growing within her. Doubt and fear still clung to her, shadows cast by the past, but the sanctuary's quiet strength seeped into her bones. Here, in this hidden refuge, she could feel the stirrings of hope taking root. Emma's fingers brushed against a folded scrap of parchment tucked between the diary's pages. Unfolding it, she found a hand-drawn map detailing the church's secret passages and the surrounding countryside. The lines were delicate but precise, marking paths and hidden rooms with a care that spoke of countless careful journeys. Studying the map, Emma traced the routes with her finger, memorizing the curves and turns. The knowledge was a lifeline, a guide to safety in a world that had offered her little. Each path represented a thread connecting her to the women who had come before. Women who had faced fear and uncertainty with quiet determination. The soft creak of wood above startled her, and Emma's breath caught. The church was not as empty as she had hoped. She pressed a hand to her belly, grounding herself in the present, drawing strength from the life within. She moved cautiously toward the narrow staircase, pausing to listen. The silence returned, heavy and still. Emma allowed herself a small, relieved breath before descending, the worn steps familiar beneath her feet. Back in the nave, dust motes danced in the pale light filtering through the stained glass. The church's vast emptiness pressed in around her. But Emma felt a new awareness, a blending of past and present, of solitude and solidarity. Her eyes scanned the altar, drawn once again to the hidden door she had discovered. A strange urge compelled her forward, and she knelt beside the stone panel, fingers tracing its rough surface. The door swung open smoothly, revealing the dim chamber below. Descending once more, Emma felt the cool air wrap around her like a cloak. The sanctuary's atmosphere was charged with a quiet reverence, as if the space itself awaited her next move. She crossed the small room, her gaze falling on the wooden chest she had found earlier. The faded letters and relics inside beckoned, each item a fragment of lives lived in secret. Emma pulled a bundle of letters free, their ink faded, but the words still legible. Reading them, she learned of whispered plans, of women seeking shelter and solace, of a network dedicated to protecting new life against a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. The letters revealed acts of kindness and defiance, the delicate weaving of a community bound by necessity and hope. Emma's heart swelled with a mixture of sorrow and admiration. These women, hidden in the margins of history, had carved out a space for themselves and their children, a sanctuary from judgment and danger. As she folded the letters carefully, a sudden sharp pain knotted in her abdomen. Emma gasped, clutching her belly as waves of discomfort rippled through her. The weight of the moment pressed down, the fragility of life laid bare. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she steadied herself against the cold stone wall. The sanctuary around her seemed to pulse with quiet energy, as if lending her its strength. Emma closed her eyes, breathing deeply, recalling the stories of courage and resilience she had just read. The sanctuary was more than a place. It was a legacy of survival. A whisper of a breeze stirred the herbs hanging overhead, and Emma felt a calm settle over her. She was not alone. The women who had walked this path before her echoed in the silence, their presence a balm to her fears. She rose slowly, determination hardening within her. The pain was a reminder of the journey ahead, one she would face with the strength of those who had come before. Emma returned to the map, studying it once again. The paths and secret doors were not just routes through the physical world. They were symbols of escape, of protection, of hope. Her fingers lingered on a particular mark near the edge of the drawing, a small cross beside a cluster of trees labeled Willow Grove. The name stirred something deep within her, a faint memory she couldn't quite place. She folded the map carefully, tucking it into the safety of the diary. The sanctuary beneath the church was a beginning, but Emma knew her journey was far from over. As twilight deepened outside, casting long shadows through the cracked stained glass, Emma settled back into the chamber. The diary, the letters, the map, they were keys to a past that could guide her future. The quiet was punctuated only by the soft drip of water from the damp stone, a steady rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. In the stillness, Emma allowed herself to hope. The sanctuary was more than shelter. It was a promise that even in the darkest times, life could find a way to flourish. She closed her eyes, feeling the life within her move gently, a reminder of the strength and resilience that had carried generations of women before her. And with that fragile spark of hope, Emma prepared to face whatever lay ahead, knowing she was part of a story far greater than her own. In the dim light of the hidden chamber, Emma's fingers trembled as she carefully unfolded the brittle pages of the worn diary once more. The faded ink revealed the intimate story of a woman whose life had been etched into these very walls. Agnes, the midwife, who had tended to mothers in secret, administering care where others feared to look. Emma's eyes scanned the delicate handwriting, each word inviting her deeper into a world of quiet courage and unwavering compassion. The diary told of a time long past, when the church had served not just as a place of worship, but as a sanctuary for those in desperate need. Agnes had chronicled her days with a tender honesty, recounting moments of joy and sorrow, the weight of responsibility heavy upon her shoulders. Emma felt the pulse of those stories beat alongside her own, a shared rhythm born of hope and hardship. As she read, Emma discovered that Agnes had been more than a caregiver. She was a guardian of secrets, a beacon for women who faced judgment and persecution simply for bringing new life into the world. The diary detailed the delicate balance Agnes maintained, sheltering her charges from prying eyes while nurturing their strength and resilience. Emma's breath caught at a passage describing the sanctuary beneath the altar, a hidden chamber where mothers could find safe harbor, away from the dangers that lurked outside. The description matched the very space Emma now occupied, a revelation that sent a shiver through her spine. This room had once been a cradle of hope, a refuge woven from faith and determination. Her heart swelled with a profound connection to Agnes, to the countless women who had sought solace here. Emma imagined their whispered prayers, their quiet tears, the fragile beginnings of life protected within these stone walls. The weight she carried in her belly felt lighter, buoyed by an invisible thread stretching back through time. Setting the diary gently aside, Emma's gaze drifted to the small chest resting against the chamber wall. She opened it with reverence and revealing a collection of faded letters, delicate relics, and worn fabrics. Each item was a testament to lives lived in shadow, stories preserved against the erosion of time. One letter, tied with a faded ribbon, caught Emma's attention. She unfolded it carefully, the words faded but still legible. It was a plea for help from a young mother seeking refuge, her handwriting trembling with desperation and hope. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she imagined the fear and courage that must have carried those words through the years. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with memories and unspoken prayers. Emma felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her, a mantle passed down from Agnes and the women who had come before. This was not just a place of shelter, but a legacy of care and courage, waiting for someone to carry it forward. As she absorbed the gravity of her discovery, a distant sound stirred the stillness, a faint rustling from above. Emma's heart quickened, tension prickling along her skin. The church was no longer silent. Footsteps echoed softly on the stone floor above, voices murmuring in low tones. Fear surged through her veins as she hurried to conceal the diary and letters within a hollowed space beneath the wooden table. She pressed her back against the cool stone wall, listening intently as the footsteps drew nearer. The voices were indistinct but carried an edge of urgency, as if searching for something hidden. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Were they authorities? Locals? Would they discover the chamber, its secrets, the fragile hope it contained? The thought of losing this sanctuary, the only refuge she had found, filled her with fierce resolve. The footsteps paused just above her, voices hushed. Emma closed her eyes, steadying her breath, drawing strength from the life she carried within. The stories of Agnes and the women before her whispered courage into her soul, reminding her that this place had withstood storms far greater than this. After a tense moment, the footsteps retreated, fading into the distance. The church fell back into its heavy silence, broken only by the distant drip of water from the ancient stones. Emma exhaled slowly, the tension easing from her body. She retrieved the diary and letters, clutching them close as if they were a shield. The sanctuary was hers now, a fragile beacon in a world that had often felt cold and unyielding. Determined, Emma settled once more in the quiet chamber, opening the diary to a new page. Agnes's words filled the room, weaving a tapestry of resilience and hope. Emma's fingers traced the lines, absorbing the wisdom passed down through generations. The chamber, once a secret refuge for mothers in peril, now held another, a woman seeking strength to face the uncertain path ahead. Emma felt the weight of that legacy settle upon her, solemn promise to protect and nurture the life within and the stories that had carried her here. Outside, the storm had softened to a gentle drizzle, the rain's rhythm a lullaby against the ancient stones. Emma closed her eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the pulse of the past and the fragile heartbeat of her unborn child intertwine. In that quiet moment, surrounded by shadows and whispers, Emma found a flicker of hope. A silent vow to carry forward the legacy of care, courage, and sanctuary that Agnes had begun so long ago. The soft flicker of candlelight cast long shadows across the rough stone walls of the hidden chamber, its warm glow a gentle contrast to the cool dampness settling in the air. Emma sat beneath the small window, the worn diary open on her lap, and the faint scent of dried lavender and sage hanging heavy around her. Each word she read felt like a thread weaving her closer to a forgotten lineage, to a purpose that now seemed inevitable. Agnes's diary had revealed more than just stories of secret births and hidden sanctuaries. It spoke of a legacy of care that transcended time, a mission to protect the vulnerable when the world outside was harsh and unforgiving. Emma's fingers traced a passage that described the church's deliberate abandonment, a sacrifice made to guard its sacred secrets from those who would seek to destroy them. The decision to leave the church silent and empty, Agnes wrote, was a shield, a way to protect the sanctuary and all who depended on it. The women who once walked its halls had understood that sometimes survival meant fading into the shadows, keeping the light alive in secret. Emma closed the diary gently, the weight of those words settling into her chest alongside the life growing within her. The sanctuary beneath the altar was not just a relic of the past. It was a living testament to resilience and hope. A place where new beginnings had always been possible, even in the darkest times. Lost in thought, Emma ran her hand over the faded map pinned to the wall, the intricate lines marking hidden passages and safe routes through the surrounding countryside. The map had been Agnes's guide, a lifeline for those seeking refuge, and a symbol of the careful planning that had kept the sanctuary alive. Emma's eyes lingered on a small notation near the edge. Willow Grove, a place marked with a delicate cross. The name stirred a faint memory, something buried deep within her, a whisper of a place she had never visited, but somehow knew. The quiet was broken by the soft creak of the wooden door opening above, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. Footsteps echoed on the stone floor, tentative and cautious. She pressed herself against the wall, clutching the diary and map close, her breath shallow. The voices were low, hushed with urgency. Emma's mind raced, imagining who might be searching the church, locals, officials, or others unaware of the sanctuary's true purpose. Fear tightened its grip, but beneath it, a flicker of determination burned brighter. She recalled Agnes's words about the sacrifices made to protect the sanctuary, the quiet battles fought in shadows. Emma was no longer a frightened woman fleeing her past. She was part of something larger, a guardian of a fragile legacy. The footsteps faded, and the silence returned, heavy and expectant. Emma exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the diary. The sanctuary was hers to protect now, a delicate flame she would carry forward. She rose and moved toward the altar, the hidden door leading back to the chamber creaking open with familiarity. Descending the narrow staircase, Emma felt the cool stone beneath her palms, the air thick with history and hope. Back in the chamber, she gathered the herbs hanging from the ceiling, lavender, sage, and chamomile, and arranged them carefully on the wooden table. The scents mingled, filling the room with a calming presence, a balm for the soul. Emma's thoughts turned inward, to the uncertainty that had shadowed her pregnancy, the loneliness that had accompanied her journey. Yet here, surrounded by the echoes of women who had faced the same fears and found strength, she felt a quiet courage blossoming. She opened the diary to a new passage, Agnes's words describing the rituals and remedies used to ease the pains of childbirth, to nurture both mother and child. The instructions were simple yet profound, a blend of herbs, prayers, and steadfast care. Emma traced the lines of the grimoire-like entries, absorbing the wisdom etched by hands long gone but not forgotten. The sanctuary was more than a physical refuge. It was a place of healing, a cradle for life and resilience. A sudden sharpness in her abdomen reminded her of the fragile life she bore. She pressed a hand to her belly, drawing strength from the sanctuary's embrace. The path ahead was uncertain, but Emma was ready. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, the storm's fury giving way to quiet renewal. The church, once abandoned and silent, had become a beacon, a place where past and present converged in a promise of protection and hope. Emma began to prepare, gathering the herbs and arranging the space with care. The sanctuary beneath the altar was ready to fulfill its purpose once more, to shelter life and shield it from harm. As the flickering candlelight danced across the stone walls, Emma whispered a silent vow to honor the legacy of Agnes and the women who had come before, to carry forward their courage and compassion. The diary lay open beside her, its pages a testament to resilience. Emma's fingers brushed the worn leather cover, feeling the weight of history and hope intertwined. In the quiet sanctuary, surrounded by shadows and soft light, Emma embraced her role, not just as a mother-to-be, but as a keeper of a sacred trust, a guardian of life's fragile flame. The journey ahead was unknown, but within these walls, Emma found the strength to face it, to protect the sanctuary, to nurture the life within, and to ensure that the legacy of care and courage lived on. A sudden, sharp sound shattered the fragile calm of the hidden sanctuary. A creak from the heavy wooden door above, followed by hurried footsteps echoing through the ancient stone halls. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The soft patter of rain outside was drowned out by the pounding of her heart as the urgency in those footsteps grew louder. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall, clutching the diary and the map close to her chest. The weight in her belly felt heavier now, a silent reminder of the life she carried and the vulnerability that came with it. The sanctuary, once a place of solace, now felt exposed, fragile under the threat of discovery. The footsteps paused just above the chamber, voices whispering urgently but indistinctly. Emma's pulse quickened. Were they authorities searching for trespassers? Or worse, people who might destroy the sanctuary's secrets without understanding their value? The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Instinctively, Emma scanned the chamber for a hiding place, eyes settling on a shadowed alcove behind a stack of old wooden crates. Sliding quietly, she tucked herself into the narrow space, the rough stone pressing against her back as she tried to steady her breathing. Every sound seemed magnified. The creaking of the door, the scraping of feet, the distant rumble of thunder beyond the church walls. Her heart pounded fiercely, each beat a drum of fear and defiance. She thought of Agnes and the women who had protected this sanctuary before her, their courage echoing through time. Emma's fingers tightened around the diary. Their legacy was now her burden to bear. Above her, footsteps moved closer to the chamber's entrance. A beam of light from a flickering lantern swept across the stone floor, illuminating the scattered relics and dried herbs. Emma's breath hitched as the light flickered dangerously close to her hiding spot. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to become invisible, to melt into the shadows. The moment stretched taut, a fragile thread between discovery and escape. Suddenly, the footsteps retreated, and the murmured voices faded into the distance. The heavy door above closed with a soft thud, sealing the silence once more. Emma exhaled slowly, the tension draining from her body like water from a cup. Emerging cautiously, she surveyed the chamber. Nothing appeared disturbed. The diary and map lay safely where she had left them, their presence a quiet reassurance amid the storm of uncertainty. The near intrusion left Emma shaken, but resolute. The sanctuary's secrets were precious, fragile, and worth defending. She knew now that her role was not just as a guardian of history, but as an active protector of this hidden refuge against those who would threaten it. Her thoughts turned inward, wrestling with the fear that had surged, but also the strength that had anchored her. The sanctuary's past was marked by sacrifice and vigilance. She would need to embody that same spirit. As the storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the church's ancient walls, Emma moved to secure the chamber. She checked the hidden door behind the altar, ensuring it was firmly closed and concealed. The herbs hanging from the ceiling swayed gently in the draft, their scent a comforting reminder of the sanctuary's purpose. Emma's fingers lingered on the diary, its pages filled with stories of resilience and hope. She understood that protecting this place meant more than guarding physical objects. It meant preserving the legacy of care for those who had nowhere else to turn. Her breathing slowed as she settled back into the quiet of the chamber. The weight in her belly pressed gently, a steady reminder of the new life she was preparing to bring into the world. In the stillness, Emma allowed herself a moment of reflection. The sanctuary had survived centuries of neglect and danger. Now, it was her turn to ensure it endured, to protect its secrets and nurture its promise. The night deepened, the storm's fury waning to a steady drizzle. Emma's resolve hardened like the stones beneath her, a quiet determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the diary open on her lap and the map safely tucked away, she prepared to embrace the sanctuary's full meaning. It was a refuge, a legacy, and now, a place where her own story would begin to unfold. Alone once more within the sanctuary's cool stone walls, Emma sank to the floor, her back resting against the rough surface as she closed her eyes. The lingering echo of footsteps above still thrummed in her ears, a stark reminder of the fragile safety she had found and nearly lost. The weight in her belly pressed insistently, grounding her in the present even as her mind wrestled with a storm of doubts. She thought of the women chronicled in Agnes's diary, their whispered prayers, their quiet bravery, the strength they summoned in the face of fear and uncertainty. And yet, here she was, a single woman, far from home, grappling with the enormity of what lay ahead. Could she protect this sanctuary? Could she protect herself and the life growing within? A wave of helplessness threatened to overwhelm her, the shadows in the chamber seeming to close in with unspoken questions. The sanctuary's silence grew heavy, pressing against her chest as if waiting for an answer. But then, amid the stillness, a spark ignited, a faint but undeniable flicker of resolve. Emma's fingers brushed over the worn leather cover of the diary, her touch steadying as she recalled Agnes's words of perseverance and hope. The legacy she had inherited was not one of surrender, but of endurance. Drawing a slow, steadying breath, Emma allowed herself to feel the strength that had carried generations of women through hardship. The sanctuary was a place not just of refuge, but of renewal, a crucible where fear was met with courage and fragility with fierce determination. Her hand moved to the small bundle of dried herbs hanging nearby. Sage, lavender, chamomile, the scents mingling softly in the cool air. She inhaled deeply, letting the familiar aromas calm her racing heart. These were the tools of healing, the symbols of care passed down through time. Opening the diary once more, Emma read a passage describing the rituals Agnes had used to ease the pains and fears of expectant mothers. The words were simple yet profound, blending herbs with prayers and steadfast presence. Emma felt a sudden kinship with the midwife, as if Agnes's spirit had reached across the years to offer guidance. A sharp pang in her abdomen reminded her of the urgency beneath her calm facade. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the delicate flutter of new life, fragile yet insistent. The sanctuary was more than stone and shadow. It was a living space, a harbor for hope. Emma rose slowly, her body aching but her spirit steadied. She moved to the wooden table, gathering the herbs and arranging them with care. The sanctuary's purpose was clear: to nurture, to protect, to heal. The storm outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, the rain's rhythm a quiet lullaby against the church's ancient walls. Emma's thoughts drifted to the future, the unknown path she must walk, the challenges yet to come. Yet in this moment, surrounded by the whispers of those who had come before, she found a fragile peace. The sanctuary held a promise that even in the darkest times, life could endure and flourish. Emma settled back onto the stone floor, the diary open on her lap. Her fingers traced the faded words, each one a thread weaving her into the tapestry of resilience. She began to speak softly, whispering a prayer for strength, for courage, for the safe arrival of the life within her. The chamber seemed to embrace her, the air thick with the weight of history and hope. As the daylight dimmed, Emma felt a quiet resolve deepen within her. She was no longer merely a visitor in this forgotten place. She was a keeper of its legacy, a guardian of its fragile flame. The sanctuary had given her a gift, a connection to the past, a purpose for the present, and a hope for the future. And with that gift, Emma found the courage to face the uncertainty ahead. The night settled around the church like a soft shroud, and Emma closed her eyes, feeling the life inside her move gently. A steady heartbeat intertwined with the pulse of the sanctuary itself. In the stillness, she whispered a vow to protect this place, to honor the women who had come before, and to embrace the strength within herself. For in the sanctuary beneath the altar, amidst shadows and light, Emma began to find not only refuge, but renewal. The first sharp pang seized Emma before dawn broke, a sudden, fierce, tightening deep within her belly that stole her breath and sent a cold rush through her limbs. She clutched the rough stone wall of the hidden chamber, the coolness grounding her as the world narrowed to the rhythm of her own pain. The sanctuary, once a quiet refuge, now became a crucible of raw urgency. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the flickering candlelight dancing wildly against the shadows as she steadied herself. The worn diary lay open on the wooden table nearby, its pages filled with Agnes's careful notes and remedies. Emma's fingers trembled as she reached for it, the weight of generations pressing upon her. The early labor had begun. Memories of Agnes's words flooded her mind. The instructions for easing pain, the herbal mixtures, the prayers whispered in the dark. Emma's hands moved with growing purpose, gathering bundles of dried lavender, chamomile, and sage from their resting places. The scents mingled in the air, calming the storm raging within her. With trembling hands, she crushed the herbs between her fingers, steeping them in a small bowl of water. The warm liquid offered a fleeting comfort as she sipped cautiously, focusing on the steady rise and fall of her breath. The sanctuary's walls seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, echoing the resilience of the women who had come before her. Emma pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the subtle movements that spoke of life and hope amid the pain. A sudden wave of dizziness swept over her, and she sank to the floor, clutching the cold stone as the contractions tightened their grip. The chamber's silence wrapped around her, a protective embrace against the storm outside and the turmoil within. Summoning every ounce of strength, Emma remembered the bell she had seen hanging near the hidden door. A simple, unassuming call to aid. Her fingers found it, trembling but determined, and she rang it slowly, the clear sound resonating through the church's empty halls. Moments passed like hours before footsteps answered, soft and steady. The door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. Margaret, the midwife from Agnes's diary, who had become something more than a name, a presence woven into the sanctuary's fabric. Margaret's eyes were gentle but resolute as she stepped inside, a small satchel of tools and herbs in hand. She moved with practiced calm, assessing Emma's condition with a reassuring nod. The midwife's presence was a balm, a tangible link to the legacy Emma had uncovered. Guided by Margaret's steady hands and whispered instructions, Emma found strength in the rhythm of each contraction, in the ancient rituals passed down through generations. The herbs, the prayers, the quiet encouragement, all combined to create a sanctuary, not just of stone, but of spirit. The hours stretched, marked by the ebb and flow of pain and hope. Emma's breath grew steady, her resolve hardened by the knowledge that she was part of a lineage of women who had faced the unknown with courage. When the moment finally arrived, the chamber was filled with a sacred stillness. Emma's cries mingled with the gentle encouragement of Margaret, the flickering candlelight bearing witness to the miracle unfolding. A new life was born in the shadowed sanctuary. A daughter, fragile and fierce, crying her first breath into the quiet room. Emma held her close, tears mingling with sweat as the weight of the past and the promise of the future converged. Margaret smiled softly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "She is strong," the midwife whispered, "born of courage and love." Emma gazed down at her daughter, a name rising unbidden to her lips, Elena, a tribute to the women who had carried this legacy before her. The storm outside had passed, replaced by the gentle light of dawn filtering through the cracked, stained glass. The sanctuary, once a secret refuge, had become a cradle of new beginnings. As Emma rocked her daughter in the warmth of the chamber, she felt the legacy settle around her, not as a burden, but as a gift. The sanctuary had fulfilled its sacred purpose once more, a beacon of hope and resilience in a world often unkind. In that quiet, sacred space, Emma knew her journey was only beginning. The stories of Agnes, Margaret, and the countless women before them had led her here, and now it was her turn to carry the flame forward. With Elena in her arms, Emma whispered a promise to protect this sanctuary, to nurture their legacy, and to embrace the strength woven into their shared bloodline. The sanctuary beneath the altar had become more than a refuge. It was a living testament to life's enduring power. The morning sun seeped softly through the cracked, stained glass, casting fractured colors across the stone floor of the hidden chamber where Emma cradled her newborn daughter, Elena. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and the quiet weight of history, a sacred stillness that wrapped around them like a protective shawl. Outside, the world continued its relentless pace. But within these walls, time seemed to pause, honoring the fragile new life nestled against Emma's chest. Yet, despite the sanctuary's calm, Emma's thoughts churned with a restless urgency. The legacy she had inherited was precious, but fragile. The church and its hidden chamber, once a refuge for women like her, now stood vulnerable, not just to the ravages of time, but to the scrutiny of a world that might not understand or respect its purpose. Determined to secure the sanctuary for the future, Emma rose carefully, her body still tender from childbirth, but her spirit resolute. She wrapped Elena in a soft cloth and stepped out of the chamber, ascending the narrow staircase into the church's nave. The vast emptiness greeted her, sunlight filtering through dusty windows and illuminating the faded carvings on the altar. Emma's eyes scanned the space, taking in every detail. The worn pews, the crumbling stone, the sense of abandonment that hung heavy. This place, once vibrant with whispered prayers and secret births, had been left to decay. But now, with Elena in her arms, Emma vowed it would be restored. Her first step was to reach out to the local community, to historians and preservationists who might recognize the church's hidden significance. She knew it would not be easy. Years of neglect and suspicion had cast a long shadow. But with the diary, the map, and the stories she carried, Emma felt equipped to fight for the sanctuary's future. She found a small town nearby, its streets lined with modest homes and weathered storefronts. Emma sought out the local historical society, a modest building filled with dusty archives and earnest volunteers. There she shared the diary, the map, and the tale of the secret sanctuary beneath the church. The historian, a woman named Claire, listened with growing fascination and respect. "This is remarkable," Claire said, tracing the lines of the hand-drawn map. "Hidden passages, a refuge for mothers. This church holds a story that must be preserved." Together, they began to document the church's history, gathering photographs, testimonies, and archival records. Emma's presence sparked interest and empathy, turning strangers into allies. Word spread, and a small group of volunteers formed, committed to restoring the church and protecting its hidden chamber. Back at the sanctuary, Emma balanced her new role as mother with the demands of preservation. Days were spent cleaning, cataloging artifacts, and planning restorations. Nights were filled with the soft coos of Elena and the steady glow of candlelight as Emma recorded her own story in a new journal, a continuation of the legacy begun by Agnes. The sanctuary, once hidden and forgotten, began to breathe anew. Walls were reinforced, the altar gently restored, and the hidden chamber secured. Emma installed locks and signs to protect the space, ensuring that its secrets would be safeguarded for generations to come. Throughout it all, Elena grew, her presence a living symbol of hope and continuity. Emma watched her daughter with a fierce love, knowing that the sanctuary was now as much a home as it was a heritage. The local community embraced the church as a site of quiet strength, a testament to resilience and compassion. Stories of the sanctuary's past inspired new conversations about care, refuge, and the power of hidden histories. Emma's journey from lost and alone to guardian and mother was woven into the fabric of the church's revival. Each day, as sunlight warmed the stone, she felt the presence of the women before her. Their courage, their wisdom, their unyielding spirit. Together with Claire and the volunteers, Emma organized gatherings to share the sanctuary's story, to honor the sacrifices made in its shadow, and to envision a future where its mission would endure. In the quiet moments, Emma returned to the hidden chamber, holding Elena close as she whispered promises of protection and love. The diary lay open beside them, a bridge between past and present, a reminder that their story was part of a greater tapestry. As autumn painted the countryside in hues of gold and crimson, Emma began to write her own entries in the journal, a chronicle of renewal, resilience, and hope. Her words flowed with the same quiet strength she had found in the sanctuary, a testament to the enduring power of legacy. The sanctuary beneath the altar was no longer just a place of refuge. It was a beacon of life, a sanctuary reborn through the love and determination of one woman and her child. And as Emma's pen moved across the page, the story continued, an unbroken thread of courage woven through time, carrying the promise of tomorrow. The golden hues of autumn spilled through the cracked, stained glass, bathing the sanctuary in a soft, warm light that seemed to breathe life into the ancient stones. Emma sat quietly in the hidden chamber beneath the altar. Her daughter, Elena, nestled against her breast, the steady rhythm of the child's breathing a soothing counterpoint to the flickering candlelight. Around them, the sanctuary whispered with echoes of the past and promises of the future. In her lap lay a new journal, its leather cover smooth and inviting. A gift from Claire, the historian who had become Emma's steadfast ally. The blank pages beckoned, a canvas upon which Emma would begin to inscribe her own chapter in the long tapestry of women who had cared for this sacred place. Emma's fingers hovered over the first page, hesitant yet resolute. She recalled the journey that had brought her here, the loneliness, the fear, the discovery of Agnes's diary, and the birth of Elena within these very walls. Each memory was a thread woven into the fabric of her identity, a testament to resilience and renewal. With a deep breath, Emma dipped her pen into the inkwell and began to write. Her words flowed slowly at first, then with growing clarity and strength. She chronicled the sanctuary's hidden history, the stories of women who had sought refuge within its stone embrace, and the legacy of care that had been entrusted to her. She wrote of the storm that had driven her here, the unexpected discovery of the secret chamber, and the comforting presence of Agnes's diary. She recounted the moments of fear and hope, the near discovery by strangers, and the quiet strength that had carried her through early labor, with Margaret's guidance. Emma's pen moved across the page, tracing the contours of her journey into motherhood, the birth of Alela Nena, and the awakening of a new purpose. She described the efforts to restore the church, the support of the local community, and the emergence of the sanctuary as a beacon of safety and compassion. As she wrote, Emma felt the weight of the past settle gently upon her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of honor. The sanctuary was more than stone and shadow. It was a living testament to the endurance of love and the power of legacy. Alela Nena stirred in her arms, opening wide eyes that reflected the flickering candlelight. Emma smiled softly, her heart swelling with a fierce pride and tender hope. This child was the embodiment of that legacy, a new keeper of the sanctuary's secrets and strength. The chamber seemed to pulse with quiet approval, as if the women who had come before whispered their blessings through the walls. Emma felt connected to them all. Agnes, Margaret, the mothers who had hidden here, and the generations yet to come. She paused in her writing, gazing around the chamber where dried herbs hung like silent sentinels, and the worn diary rested nearby. The sanctuary had transformed from a forgotten relic into a sanctuary reborn, a place where life and history intertwined. Outside, the first chill of evening settled over the countryside, the fading light casting long shadows through the stained glass. Emma closed the journal gently, her resolve firm. The sanctuary's story was now hers to tell, to protect and to nurture. With Alela Nena cradled close, Emma rose and stepped toward the narrow staircase leading back to the church above. Each step echoed softly, a rhythm of continuity and renewal. She knew that the path ahead would hold challenges, but within her burned a steadfast light, the flame of the sanctuary's enduring legacy. As she emerged into the nave, the church seemed to welcome her anew, a vessel of history and hope, waiting to carry its story forward. Emma's gaze lifted to the altar, where shadows and light danced in quiet harmony. In that moment, she understood that her journey was both an ending and a beginning. The sanctuary was no longer just a place of refuge. It was a home, a legacy, and a promise. Emma stepped outside into the cool autumn air, Alela Nena's soft breaths mingling with the rustle of falling leaves. The horizon stretched wide and open, filled with possibility. With the journal safely in hand and her daughter at her side, Emma embraced her role as the sanctuary's new keeper, ready to write the next chapter in a story that spanned centuries. The legacy of care, courage, and resilience would live on through her, through Alela Nena, and through all the women yet to come. And so, beneath the vast, endless sky, Emma began to write her own story, one of hope, renewal, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us across time.